right, I'm Dinakar. I'm part of Spotline team. I head the AI and data analytics efforts. We are a partner of SAS, and we help customers deliver solutions and look from the business point of view as well as from an IT point of view. And what I'm about to present is how you navigate in this day and age of how do I want to leverage SAS Viya for modernizing your efforts in life sciences particularly. So having said that, more often customers want to go there, but what is the objective? Why do you want to go? Why do you want to go to SAS Viya is something that you have to know, or at least be able to say we do have some key things that we want to achieve, which is the cloud native capabilities with AI enabled stuff. And we hear this when we talk to customers, we say that that's what we would like to say. So some of these key components are important because historically, even if you have 9.4 infrastructure and you want to migrate over, you can do a lift and shift, but you don't get AI capabilities with 9.4. So you need to know those objectives to see why it is necessary. Other key goals that they want to do is accelerate the trials. At the same time, scalability is another factor. So you do want to document those elements and be able to say, this is the path forward. And some of the value drivers is, they do say to us, minimize the user impact. We want the user experience to be as close as what we have so that we could, speed up the adoption process. If it is too much change, we'll not be able to do it. So some of these other key value drivers, open source integration. It's important that in today's day and age, it's not just SAS, it's Python, it's R capabilities that you would want in your organization, because anyone who's programming in SAS, you would find resources in SAS, but you would also find in this current age more open source programmers. So that's embedded that you would want, not just one if you don't have SAS, you may have to have different platforms to support those. So those some of those key value drivers that drive those. And lastly, we want the scalability factor that's supporting multiple teams within life sciences, like manufacturing, like clinical data management, like biometrics, different teams using it so that they could maximize the investment. Why use SAS Viya for it? One of the things that we hear is we have one too many SAS instances. Managing is a nightmare. We don't have data consolidation in one area. We have it in multiple areas. Everyone is working in their areas only, and we don't have cross-pollination and cross capabilities. One of the other things is on-premise infrastructure, which is too expensive for us to maintain, and now everybody is in cloud, and we are unable to move the workloads into cloud. So those key components are a big factor for considering Viya. Scalability is another factor. If I lift and shift, what am I going to get versus being able to leverage the future versions of SAS. Lift and shift, like I mentioned earlier, is only going to get you what you have. What you want in the future is not something you would get. So those play a big role. And one of the beautiful things about SAS Viya is its MPP and the ability to scale out. And I'll talk a little bit more on the architecture in terms of how you can scale out, how you can deploy multiple customers within your one ecosystem using one of examples that's one of a life sciences examples. So how would you go about doing it? Do you want to just go deploy and just try to migrate, or do you want to prove it's like it works in your environment? So you classify, you understand current state, future states. You want, if your objective is to make sure you meet your user experience, then you want to understand what you have today and where do you want to go. So those play a huge role in addressing how you want to migrate over or how you want to build out. So you phase it out in that regard, build your sandbox environment, play with that sandbox environment as close as possible. We'll talk about that as well. And eventually, build out a full infrastructure that you could use it for migration and validation. And these phases are overlapping to an extent, but those allow you to think through how you want it, how you would like it to be adopted. And lastly, scaling and adopting for users and rolling out for the broader audience. Technical architecture that one of the things that we have, this is an example of one of the customers. Do we use ONTAP for storage, which is basically the NetApp version. If you had an on-premise infrastructure, it's also available in cloud. So we would have the same capabilities from a data point of view. And it's integrated into the microgrid concept here, which includes the auto scaling, where you don't need to have a huge infrastructure for that teams. It just scales out as needed, depending on how many people are working on the environment. And integrated with Kubernetes and deploying it as a code on AWS. That's what we have. What you see on the right is the dynamic cluster concept, and the dynamic cluster is, imagine you have 3 different teams using it, and 3 different users in 3 different ways. So one of the things is you would want, let's just say you have a CDM. CDM works in one area, or if you have a biometrics that work in one area, you have a PDM that works in one area, or if it was Roche as a customer, you would have 15 different divisions using something like this, where the head controls the slave node sort of infrastructure, in which you would have different divisions working in these areas just as a thing. So you need to know those elements and deploy it in a way that's meaningful for your organization. And the beauty about it is these auto-scale nodes, the smaller scale nodes, are auto-scaling. So in the sense, like if you have 10 users in that department, you're only spinning up for those 10 people. If you have 20 in a different department, you would have the extra nodes spin up for their needs. So you would be able to scale out by not deploying 500 instances of SaaS or 20 instances of SaaS. You would only need 1 instance that scales out department specific nodes. And you can customize this one area. If you were to say that's my research division, I would like to scale that out, you could do that without overstepping or stepping on someone else's toes, because it's independent in that sense that it would work only for those guys or only for that department. So that's the architecture that you have to have or think through before deploying something like that. But those are all goes to your planning an infrastructure like this in the technical architecture. And obviously, data governance and regulatory compliance is a big part of our world. Without it, we don't deliver any solution in life sciences. So SaaS comes pre-built with some of the capabilities, but you do need to have IQ or QPQ as part of this. But how do you do all of this in a world where everything is moving at a rapid pace and I have to deploy it with IAC model in the future? That's something that you have to think through, because it's no longer like I'm deploying it, click, 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 and do it in an on-premise infrastructure. It's no longer that. So how do you do that in the new environment is something that you have to strategize and be able to deliver those zones. So maintaining that in a GxP compliance in a CI/CD world is a big, big component of this SaaS Wire in cloud. One might say we have done it, 9.4 lift and shift, which is great. But 9.4, you did not do CI/CD back in the day. You delivered it through clicks, which is very different today. So that's something that you have to think through. Obviously, with SaaS Environment Manager, you have the CloudTrail capabilities. You also have AWS CloudTrail components. You have those that play a huge role in how you track things. So, but this comes, SaaS Wire comes with those capabilities that you would not have had in the past. The other element is SaaS is one element of this equation. The other element is your own data. And your data has to be integrated into the SaaS ecosystem. There's no hardware or that's specific to just data that you need to, this is, in the previous example, it's an ONTAP that you have to cater, build, and in this case, what we call is the clinical data repository where your data resides. That need to be integrated and that need to be tracked so you know who's doing what in that and how the data is being manipulated. Those needs to be integrated. In this, you could integrate S3s, you can integrate ONTAPs, you could practically integrate any of their sources, but it depends on the use case by use case. So you need to think on those strategies. What's your data strategy and where do you store that? Next, your clinical data has to go through ingestion process, whether it's EDC data or whether it's vendor data that's coming from labs or any other areas. How do you bring that in? What is your data engineering capabilities that you have to have Whether you custom built it historically using SAS programs or whether you did it with some tools, you need to have that integrated into this ecosystem so that that whole life cycle of data coming in for every study goes into a certain repository. So you need to have those capabilities as well. The other element is how do you migrate your code, current code, to the new environment? You need to think through on those elements. Do you want the latest and greatest technologies in SAS Viya to be adopted, which includes the CAS engine, or do you want it to be just as is? And if it's as is, it's great. You don't need to do anything. But if it is, oh, I do have real world team, which is a massive data consumer, and I would like them to use CAS because it's much faster in CAS as opposed to doing 20 programmers loading the same data set 20 times. Compared to one-time load, 20 people using it. It's a lot different in that world. So you need to be able to strategize those components and be able to build that. And like I said in the previous example, every team would have their own area. So you're not stepping on each other's, but you are giving that capability in one instance, being able to serve different audience. So that's another element. Last but not least, data quality is a huge thing, but this component can be add-on SaaS products, or you could have your own data qualities when it comes to data engineering, clinical data engineering. But fitting that into that equation is something where you have to strategize. One of the things that I always advise my customers is do a pilot. Just don't run and go and say, like, let's qualify this and get it up and running. Great, you could do that, but the issue there is you're not proving some of those things that you would like to prove. I'll give you an example. The other day we ran into, or a few days ago, we ran into an issue when one of the users were running, hey, I need to be able to use my email, my Unix ID or my Windows ID. Well, it's too late now, we deployed it on emails. That's the thing that you have to prove in the concept before you go ahead and deploy. Because once you deploy, you can change it, there's no doubt, but you're going to orphan a lot of things that if a user uses it. So some of these nuances is something that you will only encounter if you just go ahead and build it and not do a POCs. So do the POC, and we'll talk more on the importance of it, but if you don't, I can assure you half of them will be like, this is not working for me. And you will hear this often from teams. The running an end-to-end trial is an important element. I always recommend that because imagine in a trial you have like 7 to 8 different teams using your data. Ignore the administrators, the IT component here, but the end user, the business users, you have biometrics, CDM, RDS, all these different teams, they use it in a different way. They need to have their macros running. They need to have their data and be able to access that data and be able to build that our existing capabilities integrated into this new environment. So having them run end-to-end workflows is super important. That's how you get a better outcome than just assuming that I'm going to get something up and running and not necessarily have a validated, or validated in the sense not the IQ, OQ things, but more the validated outcomes and the results of it. That would be one of the best things that you would do by spending or slowing down in the beginning, and when you get it done and having every user do it, the outcomes are going to be super, super helpful to you. You may not be able to do 100% of those tests, but if you at least get the 95%, you're only dealing with a 5% problem, not the opposite. So it's super important that you go through that. The other element is change management and process. Before you get to that, deploy it in production, have users use it, you have gone through the proof of concept, so now you already built few of the users as your champions. They have done it. So you could use them in that effort as well in the user adoption phase. So not only you did a POC, but you did the byproduct of it is you created champions that could vouch for you. That is things we don't pay attention to these, but those people are going to help you move the needle in terms of bringing the other users along with it. And they'll share their knowledge. So this is very important. And the reason I mentioned that earlier about different teams is that persona approach. You approach RDS teams, who are the research teams, who are the biometrics, who are the CDM. When they do those, the persona, how do you use that data? How do you use SAS? How do you view the data? That's what is going to help them help you in the user journey. It's important that you think through on those. It's not about just a solution up and running. It's about the end user who's going to make this break or successful. So that is the big factor in it. So take that persona approach when you're about to go do that. Obviously, some of the new skills or new team members would need new skills because this is a new product. The existing ones don't have all the capabilities, the ones that are coming in the new ones, so you need to upskill them. Display Manager is going to be a big thing. The SAS Studio is a big thing. So some of them are going to be, I don't know how to do this because I'm used to EG. I do all of my workloads in EG, so how do I go about doing it? So you need to have those people using it in a new environment. Currently they look the same because EG also is in, the look and feel is the same, but there is a change. Now you're going to go to a URL as opposed to having a desktop application on your laptop. So there's a change there too. So it's important that you upskill your team and be able to help them get to that stage, and what you also have to know what your organization has bought in that regard to, like some of the capabilities like Model Studio and stuff. So lastly, build your community. Like I said, if you did your POC, if you did a persona approach, you already have some of these people. Make them your champions and build that community of users so that they could help you in the journey to get to your final state. It's important you take that approach. Some of the challenges we learned while doing this in one of the customers is, there's a component of when you're deploying things, you run into issues. You don't know these ones because cloud native solution requires certain things, and it's scaled, obviously, but if you want to write something at a speed for X amount of users, say you have 1,000 users, you need to know what you need to open up on the AWS side or on the Azure side. Not knowing that could run into technical challenges. You would be like facing a performance issue. But if you were to look at this at a very granular level from a technical point of view and be able to address that component, you will be able to solve it. It's not rocket science, but at least when you're doing those POCs, have them run these components so you could know what problem I'm seeing, instead of just go about building a solution. So I would highly recommend that. We learned that. It was not a complicated one, but it's a good one to catch early on. When it comes to moving away, there's always this element of like, why do I have to adopt? It's working for me, but you should also look at it as the capabilities that you have today are not going to serve you tomorrow. Everybody is leading towards or going towards AI. That is going to be a big factor in moving to it. So I don't know how many of you have gone to the AI Studio booth and asked a question or how you're going to do it. That's just a first version of it where you can ask the question of, can I write a program? The future is much bigger on that front. Like Mel was talking, it's about how you use it, not about like, how do you shrink your team. It's about how do you use it to make things faster. Scalability factor we talked about that's a human capital scalability. If I were to have 50 people today and I would like to run 50 studies, you're good. But I still want to do 50 studies, or maybe I want to do 100 studies, but I just don't want to scale outwards. I want to be the lean organization and be able to do that. Those are the capabilities that you would need. So if it ain't break, don't fix it, it's not going to help you. You might say like, yeah, it's working. Sure. A day comes when someone asks like, hey, why can't we scale? You would be like, oh, we never prepared for this scenario. So don't be in that. Think about what is down the lane. So it's important that you do that. The other element that we hear is that we want EG. This is users ask us all the time. The problem is EG is supported, but the problem that we face that you have to think from is IT point of view. If you have 1,000 users, they're supporting 1,000 different laptops to make it work. That is not scalable for your own organization. So give them the benefit of, let's work together to be a much more web browser-based environment where you would be able to log in and do your work with a very little change. So it's important that you think through those components. And my advice, start small. Don't go about boiling the ocean. It's not worth it. But it's very important that you do a POC with everybody in the picture, not just one team. It's not IT's, it's everybody's. Take the mindset of end user, don't take the mindset of IT, because the solution is not for IT, end of the day. So think from that point of view, bring everybody who's going to use the solution, let them play, let them tell you what is not working, what is working. 99.99% everything will work if you listen to what their needs are. You just have to make some changes. There are some scenarios where you may have to tweak a business process a little bit, but that's inevitable with any new technology, right? It's not SaaS thing. So be on that journey. All right. So what's the ROI for doing this? Why? Right? And what is coming in the future? I can tell you the scalability is one of the biggest factors that I could see as a huge ROI. Like I said, an example, if you had a 50 team doing a 50 studies, in the future, your same 50 team will be able to run 100 studies from an analysis point of view. That is an ROI that you don't have today. You potentially, as if you're an end user, you're having to hire 100 people to do those 100 studies. That is an ROI that you would get for sure in the next 3 years. You would be able to accomplish that, because the tools that are going to get enhanced are going to give you that capabilities where you would not need to do your own programming. Instead, you could ask those capabilities and say, generate the programs based on your own macros, based on your own historical programs, outputs, TFLs, everything that is your own organization centric. That is not something that you're going to get today in your 9.4 world, which is a game changer. Because I'll use an example. If you were to have a PDF predefined with your global standard saying, this is my Times Roman size 12 output, you don't need to go about doing that based on it. But the AI capabilities would learn those capabilities, and your output will be the same one that it uses. If a programmer wants to create his own macro to define that Times Roman size 12, he no longer does to, because the AI would understand where your existing macro is and use that macro, as opposed to saying, oh, let me build a new global standard that I would like to apply for myself. So there's that ROI is something that is you're going to get that consistency across studies. So that's very important. So you will look at that as a long-term savings, faster drug or outcomes from a submission standpoint. You would not be able to delay things. Those are the things that you may not be able to measure right away. But if you were to say, hey, what's my timeline? In 6 months, can I submit it? Can I get, 6 months is probably the wrong example, but from a top-line result standpoint, if I have a date, how soon can I get this out? How soon can I get it into the hands of the next team that they could do this? Those are some things that you would be seeing value and a speed approach in these models, in the newer versions of SaaS. So we are on this journey. We're almost at the tail end in one of our customers. So we are looking forward to deploying the AI capabilities in the near future, but more importantly, decommission the old one, which is going to save a ton of us for sure. But